Good afternoon. My name is Doug Lapp, and I'm Rockland's Town Administrator. As your Town Administrator, I'm a member of the Massachusetts Municipal Managers Association, and the MMMA has recently put out a public statement about recent events, which I wanted to read as they also reflect my personal views. More than a week ago, we watched in horror as Mr. George Floyd was killed due to the callous actions and inactions of several Minneapolis police officers. We're now witnessing the visceral pain, outrage, and sadness and frustration of many through protests across the nation. It is our responsibility as leaders of municipal organizations to do more than wring our hands and hope it doesn't happen in our community. It is time for us, through our collective voice and our actions, to lead. The tragedy of Mr. Floyd's death presents yet another opportunity for us to have constructive, honest conversations about institutional racism and other forms of oppression in our American society. This is a responsibility that as professional managers we will not shy away from. Rather, we can work together to build a safer, unified society. The MMMA's Task Force on Diversity and Inclusion states, "We stand for those who are calling out any police brutality, ingrained racism, and violence toward people of color in our country. We commit as leaders to strengthen the trust in our communities by making sure that we hire police officers and team members who reflect the values of integrity, compassion, and respect for the diversity of all individuals. We commit to listening to and proactively responding to community concerns when they arise. We stand with our police officers and team members who demonstrate these high moral values every day. And we share in the anger and sadness in our community that our community members are feeling. And we're channeling those feelings to work toward a better future for our residents and our communities, the Commonwealth, and generations to come. We commit to continuing to be active participants and working hard to educate, train, and affect change in our organizations throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we commit to engage with the Executive Board and with the Managers and Police Chiefs Committee in coming weeks to provide the association further information on what policies, training, practices are in place here in Massachusetts related to fair and impartial policing and identification of areas for improvement to strengthen the trust in our communities." So with that effort, I've asked our police chief, John Llewellyn, if he'd be willing to answer some questions about this issue for the community. And I want to thank Chief Llewellyn for taking the time to respond with his thoughts and his opinions on these matters. So Chief, as you know, on May 25th, 2020, Mr. George Floyd, a 46-year-old African-American man, died in Minneapolis, Minnesota, after a white police officer knelt on his neck for almost 9 minutes while he was lying face down, handcuffed on the street. We're all obviously horrified by this terrible incident, this crime. Since that time, there have been protests across the nation which are still occurring as we speak today. To begin, can you explain your reaction to this killing from your perspective, both as a regular person as well as from your professional position as Rockland's police chief?
Yes, thank you, Doug. Thank you for this opportunity, first of all. I find it difficult to find a distinction between my personal opinion and my professional opinion because I've been a police officer for 32 years now. And I can tell you that I was enraged when I saw what had happened, and I sort of expected the backlash from the communities once I saw what had happened, because as a police officer, we're trained that when we need to take a suspect, doesn't matter, a human being into custody, once that person is handcuffed, the issue is over. They're then treated as any other human being should be treated. They should be sat up, they should be given water, they should be taken care of like any other person. Now listen, there are times when an arrest is a violent incident. If somebody does not comply and they need to be taken into custody for the safety and protection of the general public, it's going to oftentimes get violent. And that's a very unfortunate thing for both the police officer, who oftentimes get injured, but also for the suspect, because they need to be taken into custody. There is absolutely no excuse for kneeling on someone's back, someone's neck, for an extended period of time. Once those handcuffs are in place, they need to be sat up, they need to be given any sort of medical attention that they are required, and move forward from there through the processing process. So as a father, as a husband, I was enraged, I was saddened, because I truly believe that the police profession has been making some great strides over the past few years. So anger and rage is what I felt when I saw that.
What do you think was the responsibility of the other 3 officers that were there? Should they have done something to stop it, and why do you think they didn't?
They 100% had a legal and a moral obligation to stop what was going on. Now, unfortunately, what happened, from my understanding, and again, I don't have all the facts, but I'm told that 2 of them had been on the job for less than a week out of the academy, and they're watching a veteran sergeant commit an act that's criminal, and they didn't have the courage, unfortunately, to speak up. I've had a conversation with a number of officers in the Rockland Police Department, and every single one of them, to a person, would absolutely have pulled that sergeant off of Mr. Floyd. They absolutely would have done the right thing, sat him up, checked him out, got him medical attention. So I understand that these rookies didn't have the courage to do that. However, they had a legal obligation that they were taught in the academy, and they also had a moral obligation to act, and they didn't, unfortunately.
So you anticipated my next question, which was if you could talk a little bit about the culture in the Rockland Police Department. And you just touched on that, but if you could maybe talk a little bit more about the Rockland Police Department's culture, and if you think something like this could ever happen in the town of Rockland.
So, of course, my gut instinct says, no, this would never happen in Rockland. We're better trained than that. We're better people. And I think the key to that answer is the communication. We have regular staff meetings with the deputy chief, lieutenant, all the sergeants. We talk about issues just like this. We talk about racial diversity, bias, implicit bias, bias that we don't even know that we have. But we communicate about that. They then, in turn, at their roll calls, will do roll call video training. They will then discuss it with the officers on their shift. So my gut tells me, no, this would never happen in Rockland because we do a much better job communicating with one another. And over the past few years, they've been trained. They've been trained a lot in diversity training, communication with those with mental health issues, racial bias training, implicit bias training. So it has not happened in my 32 years here, and I don't see it happening in the future because I think we're only getting better.
That's great. How do you think the police department is viewed by the community in Rockland?
My instinct is that we're viewed rather well. We have very few complaints against officers, and I think that is one of the #1 telltales. Because if we had a large number of internal affairs investigations going on, that would send a signal to me that we have a problem. We have very few internal affairs investigations. And I think part of that reason is that we do a good job communicating with the officers, the expectations of the management. And if there is ever a problem, and we're going to get a complaint now and again that somebody spoke inappropriately or gruffly to a person, you know, during an arrest or to somebody on the street, we deal with that immediately. The lieutenant we have a process, a written intake form is filled out. The lieutenant does a complete investigation. He brings the officer in, speaks to them, then sits with the deputy chief, and then it comes up to me. We make a decision. Was it founded or unfounded? If it was founded, what sort of discipline happens? And that all happens within days. That happens very quickly. So the message to the men and women of the police department is we will not tolerate that. So I think that has trickled out to the community, and they realize that we're here for the community, and we will do anything to help them. And if they feel that they've been treated unfairly, that we will investigate that and take the appropriate action.
Now you touched on this next one a little bit earlier, but maybe you could go into a little bit more depth about the types of initiatives or programs that you've implemented as chief to help respect the diversity in our community and prevent bias. So I know you mentioned it briefly, but if maybe you could just talk a little bit more about some of those programs you've run.
Sure. I actually sit on the Southeastern Chiefs Training Advisory Committee. So what that means, it's a long title, but what it means is that I sit with a number of other chiefs, and we actually look at and select the type of training that our veteran officers have at their in-service training annually. So all police officers are required by law to go through 40 hours of in-service training every year. Certain parts of that training are mandatory: firearms training, CPR, first responder, things like that. but yet we have 3 full days that we can select the type of training that we want. We've brought in experts from out of state on bias training, racial diversity training, communication skills training. So bringing all of that to the Southeastern unit, all of my offices go through that every single year. So over the years, they've been getting this, I would say for the last 8 to 10 years, they've had some sort of diversity training every single year. The police department, we try to do a lot of outreach stuff with our RAD program for the kids. We try to get with the kids early on and let them know that the police are here to help, the police are here to be a friend. And sometimes the worst thing that we hear said during some of these community events is a parent telling a child that I'm going to call the police to come take you away. We don't want that message. The message that we want to that child is, if something's wrong or if you have a problem, call the police. They will be there to help you, not to help discipline you when the parent feels that, you know, they can't handle the discipline. We're there to help. So the RAD programs, we do the canine demonstrations, we go to Millbrook Day, we have carnival events up there, we go to Rockland Springgate Apartments, we do things there. So we try to just be in the community and let them know that we're here to help.
Based on the killing of Mr. Floyd and the resulting national protests that are happening, are you planning any new initiatives or new outreach to the African American community in Rockland?
So the African American community in Rockland is 6% of our community, but that's a huge 6%. That's a 6% that we need to do a better job with. I've talked with our school resource officer to come up with programs. Now, clearly we're at a really difficult time for me to say we're going to do A, B, or C because of the pandemic. So the Southeastern Chiefs Training Advisory Committee, we have a meeting at 10 o'clock tomorrow. So we're going to go over what sort of training should be coming for the police officers this upcoming year. A lot of that is, I'm sure everybody's going to have an opinion on this, but we're going to be looking for the best type of diversity training that we can find. So I don't have anything specific for the community right now because we're in such a state of flux. I would love for any members of the African American community in Rockland to reach out to me to see what we can do better to help them. I would love to sit down and have a dialogue with them about what sort of needs they feel their community has. So I guess this is a great opportunity for me to reach out to the community and say, what can we do better? I am ready, willing, and able 7 days a week to sit down with people and discuss issues around this. Have a dialogue, have a difficult dialogue. I've had a lot of dialogue with members of the police chiefs associations and things about how difficult this is to put your personal bias aside and have that difficult conversation. So I stand ready, willing, and able to do that with anyone in the town of Rockland.
That's great. As you know, the First Amendment to the Constitution guarantees the right of freedom of speech and the right for people to peacefully protest and to assemble to petition the government. So given that, what's your reaction to the protests that have been happening across the country as a result of this?
I think it's great. I think that this is sort of the perfect storm, if you will, the pandemic. So certain people in the pandemic may feel that there's been overreaching by the government, forcing them to stay home, not letting them go to work, not letting them go to the favorite restaurants, that side of thing. That, combined with the tragedy of Mr. Floyd, I think has been the perfect storm for people to come out and express their feelings about what's going on today. So I fully support the demonstrations, the peaceful demonstrations, the opportunity for frustrated individuals to have their voice heard. So 100% support that. What I cannot stand by and support is the very small portion of people that want to take advantage of people exercising their constitutional right by looting, by causing violence during these protests. So I think it's great to have people's voice heard peacefully.
So you are the control chief for the Metro Law Enforcement Council's motorcycle group, and you've personally commanded a group that's been helping keep the peace in Boston recently with a protest there. So can you talk a little bit about what that experience has been like for you and what's been happening?
It's been one of the most amazing experiences of my 32 years on this job. So I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where I can take up to 40 motorcycles through this Metropolitan Law Enforcement Council group and go in and assist other communities. Of course, Boston has had the largest of these demonstrations recently, so just past Sunday, I was in the middle of an 8,000 to 10,000 person rally, protest march from City Hall out to Boston Police Headquarters, and then back through the Freedom Trail. I watched, I was in the middle of the demonstration walking by, and I saw the look, the disappointment, the anger, and in many cases the hate on these young people's face. And I will tell you that from what I saw, the majority of protesters are on an age group of 18 to 25, 26. And they're really looking to have their voice heard. They're looking to make a change in this world. And through peaceful protest, they've been doing a good job with that, because worldwide this has become an event. It's become a cause for people to fight against racism. So, and racism that I think a lot of us don't even know exists today. So I think it's been a great experience for me being in there. At the same time, unfortunately, I've seen police officers hit with frozen water bottles. I've seen police officers hit with tennis balls. However, the tennis ball had a hole drilled in it and filled with cement. I've seen them spit on. I've seen the hate in the eyes of some of these people that are attacking the police. So while I'm happy to be there to assist and protect the peaceful protesters, it's very frustrating and really saddening to see the other people that are taking advantage of this and seeing an opportunity to loot stores, to attack the police, to attack each other. So it's been quite an amazing experience, and it's a lot that I can bring back to the town of Rockland Police Department, and a lot of training that we can do within our department to do a better job.
So with that being said, has the Rockland Police Department been approached by any groups that are looking to have any kind of protest or vigil here in town?
Yes, as a matter of fact, just yesterday I spoke with Mr. Landy. He is organizing a Black Lives Matter movement. It is going to happen on June 20th, Saturday, from 2 to 4 p.m. And so everyone at home knows the protest march is scheduled to start down in the Rockland Plaza at the intersection of Market and Union Street at 2 p.m. on Saturday the 20th. They're going to form up there, and then they're going to march up Union Street to the town hall. At the town hall, they anticipate having a number of speakers, and then they want to have a candlelight vigil. Mr. Landy has told me that he hopes it'll be over by 4 o'clock. So with that, we had a very nice conversation yesterday, and I told him that the police will be there in force to protect him. Basically, we'll be shutting down side streets and the main road, so he will have free access to march right up Union Street to the town hall. As they pass the side streets, so that people know, we will reopen the side streets so that they can, continue to drive and go where they need to go. At town hall, if necessary, we will shut down a portion of Union Street and allow them, depending on how many people they have, time to have their vigil and their speakers speak. And then at that point, we hope that it will peacefully break up, and then everybody will go their own way. So there may be just some disruptions to Union Street area for a couple of hours on Saturday, June 20th.
So aside from this particular vigil which is planned, do you have any advice for other members of the community who don't want to just sit back, for people that might want to get involved some way and express their outrage at what happened and peacefully sort of protest to try to affect change in our country? Do you have any advice for any of those people in our town?
Sure. I mean, listen, we follow the social media pages because oftentimes that's the best way for the police department to know what's going on in the community and what the feeling and tone of the community is at that point. From what I've seen on a number of Rockland pages, the majority of residents in Rockland are afraid that a protest/march in Rockland could turn violent like it did in Brockton or in Boston. So my recommendation to them would be to have small gatherings, have family gatherings. And again, pandemic, it causes an issue. So to have gatherings, to hold vigils in their small groups, to peacefully assemble in a park if they want to reach out to me. I'd be happy to assist them in going to a park and if necessary, providing some police protection for them to peacefully demonstrate, to have a candlelight vigil, to say prayers. Basically get together with the community, have a prayer service. I'm sure there are a number of, religious facilities in town that would help accommodate that, and would be happy once they're allowed to reopen and have people in to, have a service in memory of George Floyd, in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. So if anybody has questions or ideas, I'd have them reach out to me. I'd be happy to sit down and discuss it.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Chief. I really appreciate you taking the time to put your thoughts out there for the community to help inform them on where you're coming from and what the Rockland Police Department's all about, and just a little bit of information about the initiatives that you're implementing. And I hope this gives the community some good information for what's going to be happening, and that you should take the chief up on his offer to give the police department a call if anyone has any comments or questions or concerns. And similarly, they can always call the town administrator's office at Rockland Town Hall. So thank you again, Chief. Do you have any closing comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, I would just like to say that, these last few weeks have been very difficult on the community as a whole. I want you to know that the Rockland Police Department is here. We're here for you. We're here to support you and to assist you in any way that we can. At the same time, there are certain calls to defund the police department and all of that right now. I would love to sit down with anybody who would really like to discuss that. I just need to remind the people calling for that, there are a lot of bad people in this world. There is crime going on. As we sit here right now today, there are murders happening, there are rapes happening, there are rape of children happening, there are assaults, battery, larceny, fraud, all that stuff is happening as we sit here today. The defund the police movement really should be more about police diversity training. What can we do better? This has to be a national discussion on what police departments can do better. And I don't think that cutting budgets and laying off police officers is the answer. I think training, doing a better job, and I think we in the Northeast do a much better job. I can say in my 32 years, we've never had an incident like this in Rockland, and during the remainder of my time here, I pray to God that we don't. I send all of our supervisors, we spend a lot of money each year to send them to training. The deputy chief and lieutenant have done a lot of FBI training, law enforcement executive development. Each and every one of our sergeants have started a 3-week course. They've all done a week here or a week there of sitting in a classroom with FBI instructors about how to be better leaders, how to be better police officers. So we invest a lot of time and money in that, and I think it shows in our response to the community and our community's response to us. So I am absolutely laying it out there. Just like a gentleman called, a young man called yesterday to the police department, or 2 days ago, asking for statistics about arrests at the Rockland Police Department, breakdown of white, black, Asian, and other. And the lieutenant took all that information, gave it to me. I called the young man back yesterday. We had a 10-minute discussion, and he was very happy that we took the time to call him back, provide him that information. We're going to continue to do that. So please trust in your police department. If you have questions, or you want to have some of those difficult conversations, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And thank you very much, and stay safe, everyone. Goodbye.